for the delay. Welcome to this monthly lecture, April edition of Partha Academy of Leadership. So sorry for the little bit of delay due to some technical glitch. So before going this month, we are having a very interesting topic on transhumanism, the possibilities and perils of transhumanism. So before going to the main session, let me first request Professor Manav Kumar Das, the chairman of this academy, to give his welcome address.
Thanks, Dr. Khan. Good evening and good morning to all of you. It's a pleasure to welcome you all in this April edition of monthly lecture series of Partha Academy of Leadership. In this April edition, we have two fantastic personalities, world-renowned personalities, Dr. Partha S. Ghosh and Dr. Steve Gulans. Welcome to you, sir. Now, this session will be moderated by a renowned professor of IIT Kharagpur, Indian Institute of Technology, Kharagpur, Professor Suman Chakraborty. Let me welcome Professor Chakraborty. It's a privilege for me to give a brief introduction of Professor Chakraborty's illustrious career. Professor Chakraborty is a professor at the Indian Institute of Technology, Kharagpur, and Sir J.C. Bose National Fellow bestowed by the Ministry of Science and Technology, Government of India. Recently, he has been awarded the 2026 TWAS Award in Engineering and Computer Sciences by the United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization, UNESCO. He is also bestowed by the National Award for Teachers in the Higher Education category by the Honorable President of India. Professor Chakraborty completed his undergraduate studies in mechanical engineering from Jadavpur University in 1996 and then followed it up by his Master of Engineering from the Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore, and PhD also from the same institute, and he finished his PhD within a span of 2 years and also received the Best International CFD Thesis Award. Congratulations, Professor Chakraborty. Professor Chakraborty's research interest lies in the fundamentals of micro and nanoscale fluid dynamics, miniaturization and its applications focused towards sustainable technology goals for promoting good health and well-being of the undeserved. Professor Chakraborty is the inventor of paper and pencil microfluidics technology, a new class of electrically manipulated miniature devices that does not require any sophisticated fabrication facility. Professor Chakraborty is also known for developing disruptive medical diagnostic technologies for the undeserved. His innovation of a new piecewise isothermal nucleic acid test known as COVIRAT has emerged as the first of its kind highly accurate molecular diagnostic technology for infectious disease detection, although with the cost and simplicity of a rapid test. Professor Chakraborty further demonstrated a pathway for translating high-end lab innovation to underdeveloped locations belonging to the bottom of the pyramid. That is also one of the focus points of our Partha Ghosh Academy of Leadership, where Dr. Ghosh always talks about working for the people in the bottom of the pyramid. Professor Chakraborty, for all these contributions, has been awarded the Shanti Swarup Bhattacharya Prize, the highest scientific award from the government of India. He has been elected to many fellows of various societies in India and abroad. He has been listed among 75 scientists of India under 50 years of age as recognized by the Department of Science and Technology. With these few words, may I request Dr. Khan to take the proceedings further.
Thank you, sir. So I would request Professor Suman Chakraborty to introduce, tell us about the Academy of Leadership as well as introduce the speakers. Yeah, I think he has some medical emergency. That is why he may be late in joining. So I have his recording. So let me play that one.
Thanks, Professor Das. It is with great honor and pleasure that I welcome the esteemed dignitaries to this august gathering, where their presence adds immense value to our shared pursuit of knowledge and progress. As we are aware, the Partha Ghosh Academy of Leadership at IIT Kharagpur is a unit dedicated to shaping ethical and visionary leaders who can navigate the complexities of the modern world with integrity and purpose. Our civilization stands at a critical juncture, confronted by challenges across geopolitics, economics, climate, and growing inequality, which are all consequences of a world dominated by zero-sum thinking, where self-interest and survivalism have fragmented societies and diluted our moral compass. The Academy believes that it is time to embrace a new paradigm, leadership founded on the principles of one humanity, blending Eastern wisdom and Western innovation. The Academy's mission is to nurture leaders across academia, industry, government, and communities who exemplify selflessness, moral courage, and the ability to create enlightened synergies. The goal is to shape a future where leadership is not defined by winning at the expense of others, but by uplifting all of the humanity. The Academy seeks to empower individuals to drive positive societal change through transformative programs. It envisions itself as a pilgrimage, cultivating leadership that is not only effective but ethically grounded, fostering endeavors that connect personal potential with global realities in ways that are both locally and globally impactful. It is now my privilege to introduce Dr. Partha Ghosh, an iconic thought leader, philosopher, problem solver, futurist, and inspirer in the field of business and technology. Given his wide range of interests, arts to science, philosophy to philanthropy, business to economics, he is known as the modern Renaissance man. Over 4 decades, as a strategist, as a true global citizen, as a former partner at the McKinsey and Company, and a leader of his own global firm, Partha S. Ghosh and Associates, he has served heads of business, multinationals, and governments on significant strategic and organizational issues in close to 30 countries in Asia, Africa, EU, North America, and South America. He has inspired leaders worldwide across cultures in developed and developing socio-economic environments. His clients view him as a creative problem solver and a visionary leader. He mentors and guides several startups and CEOs around the world. He has delivered more than 250 keynote addresses in various leadership forums on strategy, innovation, nation building, leadership, and knowledge economy 2.0, and has published more than 24 articles on a wide range of significant geo-economic and geopolitical issues. Dr. Ghosh is the winner of many prestigious awards and distinctive medals. Currently, he advises and coaches business leaders around the world and teaches economics, globalization, innovation, leadership, problem solving, and strategy at the MIT and the Tufts University, USA. He believes that in the next 24 years, the world economy will undergo profound changes, which the civilization has never experienced before. Industries and governments will need to develop higher level ability to imagine in reinventing the basic tenets of capitalism, implying fundamental transformation of industry and economic models. He has 2 advanced MS and MBA degrees from the MIT. He did his undergraduate work at the IIT Kharagpur. An avid public servant, he is one of the founding members of the Boston Pledge and is involved with multiple philanthropic initiatives around the world. The Academy, the first of its kind, the Partha Ghosh Academy of Leadership, has been established at IIT Kharagpur with his kind support. The school integrates Eastern and Western wisdom to provide young students as well as senior executives with the opportunity to uncover their inner powers, influence positive outcomes on the society. It is also a great honor and privilege to introduce none other than the legendary Dr. Steve Gullans, an experienced entrepreneur par excellence, executive, scientist, investor, and author. Currently, he is the CEO of Think, a digital health company using safe and proven brain-computer interface technology to improve focus and impulse control for kids and adults. Steve began his career as a professor at the Harvard Medical School, where he co-authored 130 around scientific papers and was an elected member of the American Association for the Advancement of Sciences. Subsequently, he served as the CEO of private and public companies and was a co-founder and managing director of Excel Venture Management, a fund focused on life sciences. He is passionate about advancing innovative scientific technologies to improve the lives of millions of people around the world. He co-authored Evolving Ourselves, which describes the impact of new technologies on human health and society today and in the future. Dr. Partha Ghosh, in view of his 4 decades of experience on frontier strategic issues across industries and nations, will explore today how the emerging technologies such as general artificial intelligence, gene editing, space travel, developments in material science, among others, will change the character of humanity, transcending current boundaries of our thinking. And in the process, he will discuss the leadership requirements in the 21st century and the significance of wisdom resident in our philosophies, such as Vedas and the Upanishads. Following his talk, Dr. Steve Gullens, who is an entrepreneur, educationist, and expert in neuroscience, AI, and natural intelligence, will particularly explore a dimension of transhumanism, which is perhaps the most powerful force that is at work right now, which is brain-computer interface. It is my strong belief that both the talks will elevate our thinking not only within IIT Kharagpur, but across the centers of learning in our nation as well as the world at large. Now, I welcome Dr. Ghosh to present his talk. Dr. Ghosh, the platform is all yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed, Professors Shumon. It was a long introduction, but I hope we can do justice to your wonderful, colorful introduction. I was thinking of sharing the presentation, but this morning we had some difficulties to find out how to share, so I'll be speaking to you extempore, so that the preparation that I made over the last, I would say, couple of weeks is not wasted. It helped me to digest everything which is fermenting in my mind. So I will not use a presentation, but just speak as my thoughts evolve. And definitely the effort that I put together to prepare the presentation, I hope, will help me to go through this narrative in a most effective fashion. Now, as Shuman was talking about, we are indeed in a moment of history where the boundaries of human potential are no longer fixed. They have become fluid, they have become malleable, and increasingly within our grasp. We are entering an age of transhumanism, which is the subject for today, a movement that dares to envision and actively pursue the radical improvement of human condition through multiple technologies which are merging at the same time. Personally, I believe that we stand at a remarkable juncture in the evolution of our civilization, at the crossroads, if I may say, of ancient wisdom, which meets exponential rise of technological change, sometimes discontinuous in nature, where questions of ethics, identity, inner conscience, in tandem with synthetic biology, gene editing, general artificial intelligence, they will all merge to define what is the future of being a human. In that spirit, I must say Steve and I will explore transhumanism as a philosophical as well as a technological movement, its implications for civilization, and the resonance it might find with the ancient Vedic philosophy, and what all this will demand of future leadership. So what we understand of leadership has to change in a fundamental ways, and that would be the focus of my talk. I once again apologize, I'm not using my presentation, but as I mentioned, that we would be able to uh, hopefully develop a thought process through which Steve would take us through the discussion. Now, as you may know, that the concept of supernatural power has always been with us, both in the Eastern and Western hemisphere. When you read the ancient myths like Mahabharata, there's a concept of Ashwatthama, blessed with immortality. Some people thought cursed with immortality, with a jewel in the forehead. The concept of Karna in Mahabharata again, invulnerable, born with a divine armor which protects him. Then we have Hanuman, which in Ramayana, with a tremendous strength, who can lift mountains and fly. As you know, he flew from Indian peninsula to Sri Lanka. The concept of avatars, the rishis and the Vedic yogis who had tremendous ability to live through hundreds of years. And then in China, we have Xian. In Japan, we have Yamato Takeru. And different concepts of superhuman evolved 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 years ago. Similarly, in the Western Hemisphere, we have Gilgamesh, we have Prometheus, Icarus, Hercules, Achilles, Plotinus, with supernatural powers, particularly on the physical strength. So what I want to first highlight, the concept of supernatural power was planted in our minds, in the minds of the civilization, in various societies, which was a concept which is typically beyond our human comprehension. Now, in different ways, the concept of transhuman is a physical, a mental, or a spiritual form that has influenced politics, policy, philosophy, science, and various social religions. And as many of you know, the Superman is a movie in 1978, the first Superman. Now there's a new Superman coming up, which will be released this year, was also a concept of human being, which is possible and which is within the minds. So in my talk today, I would like to focus on what would be the nature of the world that would emerge so that we could today make the right choices in creating that world. So in that spirit, a statement for Albert Einstein becomes very, very important, which many of you know. He said, imagination is more important than knowledge. Knowledge is there as we know today, but imagination helps us to create new knowledge. Knowledge is limited, but imagination circles the world, circles our thinking. And I think in that spirit, the concept of transhumanism has to be conceived. And in the process, we have to decide how we want to shape our thought processes, our choices, so that concept of transhuman is indeed beneficial for the world, for the people at the base of the pyramid to the top of the pyramid, and for that matter, for the universe. Now that's where Rabindranath Tagore's poetry, the famous one, comes into play. I will just pick up few lines. Where the mind is without fear and the head is held high. We have to connect with this force, be it from point of view of gene editing or brain-computer interface or space travel or nanotechnology, with that spirit, without fear. And then, of course, he ends that poetry with where the mind is led forward by the ever-widening thought and action. In other words, we have to connect with this spirit with ever-widening thought and action. I personally believe that if you look at the space where what we know is defined, the circumference of the space keeps on increasing as the knowledge that we have today increases, which means the peripheries are expanding faster, which is exposing us to the unknown. So every expansion of knowledge enlarges the frontier of the unknown, hence the frontier of imagination. With that spirit, I would like to cover 5 points today, and I'll take about 3-4 minutes on each of the points. Firstly, I want to ensure that we fully understand the dynamics of transhumanism and expanding the reach of humanity. Now, people are saying I'm not visible, but I don't know what to do. My camera is on, but I think the technical people have to make the correction. I'm afraid I cannot do anything on my side. So the first point would be understanding the dynamics of transhumanism. Then I'll talk about the windows into the possible tomorrows because of transhumanism. Then I would spend some time on the dark side of transhumanism, particularly the ethical, existential, and societal challenges. In that spirit, I move on to the fourth point, which would be about Vedic imagination. How does the lessons from Vedic philosophy could be extremely important as we move forward into the world of transhumanism. And then on that basis, I'll talk about leadership imperative for the future in guiding a positive transhuman humanism. Now, when you look through history, I'm getting into the first point. What is transhumanism? You know, as we talked about in the ancient myths, we have heard about Hercules, we heard about Hanuman. But in the recent times, in the book written by Dante, Divine Comedy, in 1320, the first time the concept of transhumanism, he used the word in Latin, transhumanar, to transcend human nature, to pass beyond human nature. That was written in Divine Comedy in Latin in 1320s. And since then, various philosophers, I would say between 1200s to 1900s, during the period of European Renaissance, Francis Bacon had the concept of superhuman in a book that he wrote in 1500s. Then René Descartes wrote Discourse on Method and Physical Immortality and Stronger Mind, how we can make us physically immortal and make our mind stronger. Then William Goodwin wrote a book on earthly immortality. And then German Friedrich Nietzsche wrote a book on Übermensch, which means overhuman. So indeed, this fantasy, a philosophical inspiration was brewing during the European Renaissance. Then in the modern times, I'm talking about the last 50, 60 years, the world's transhumanism was developed by a British philosopher, biologist. His name is Julian Huxley. In 1957, he talked about transhumanism movement, and it evolved gradually till about a book written by Ray Kurzweil, which perhaps Steve will touch on. He wrote a book called Spiritual Machines in 1999. So indeed, there was a period of almost, I would say, 800 years. The concept has been evolving to in becoming a movement, particularly in the last 30 years, so that transhuman or superhuman has now become in the realm of possibility. Now, when I come in the last 15 years, something interesting has happened very silently. If you look at Elon Musk, he has got two projects right now as we speak. SpaceX, he's talking about building human colonies in Moon and Mars. And then he has the other project, which is Neuralink, 2016, where he's already implanting chips in the brain to extend people's and enhance people's mind and, I would say, brain capabilities. Then Larry Page, who is the founder of Google, he started a company in Calico Life Sciences. It's called the Calico Life Sciences, Calico Labs in 2013, which is only dedicated to expand lifespan. Could we live 200 years? Could we live 500 years? And they're working on it. These are companies. And Jeff Bezos, the founder of Amazon, started a company called Altos, which is talking about reversing aging. And then there's a company called Synchron, which is thinking of implantable chips to solve the problems of ALS patients. So indeed, there's a lot of work going on. And in the process, what is happening, genetic engineering and CRISPR, artificial general intelligence, brain-computer interfaces, nanotechnology and synthetic biology, cybernetics, longevity science and cryogenics, space travel technologies are all merging. So transhumanism to me is a merger of all these different technologies coming together to expand the human reach to the space, human reach within, and in the process, expanding lifespan and perhaps eliminate diseases. So it is indeed a merger, which I call GAIN, G for gene editing, artificial intelligence, AI, nanotechnology, N, and space, S. So I call this the science of gains for progress of humanity into the future. And we have to definitely demonstrate how to deal with the discontinuities of each of these technologies in terms of our ability to interpret the magnitude of the change, having the confidence, which Tagore talks about, being fearless in engaging with the new world which is emerging, and having enough intellectual resiliency and plasticity so that we are prepared to the big changes that is on our way in the next 10 to 15 to 30 years. So indeed, we will see as these four technical groups, as I call gains, gene editing, artificial intelligence, nano, and space comes together. We will see intelligence powered by AI. We'll see tremendous synergies possibly with extraterrestrial intelligence. Today, we understand intelligence as human intelligence. There could be other forms of intelligence, but the architecture of intelligence is different. They could merge as we meet with different types of intelligent being in the space. Physical capacity and lifespan would increase thanks to gene editing, biomechanics, and your ability to really manage your DNA. Then, of course, because of AR and VR, we could be present in multiple locations at the same time. And then, of course, we would establish, hopefully, deeper connectivity because of all these technologies with our inner universe as we connect with extraterrestrial intelligence. So indeed, it's a very interesting times we are living through. And I always telling governments that they have to have a unit or a ministry almost, a ministry of transhumanism, to continuously ask, what does it mean for that nation? What does it mean for society? And in the process, how centers of higher education should look at some of the fundamental issues and opportunities that transhumanism offers. So my vision of transhumanism 1.0 is in the next 15 to 20 years, multiple technologies will come together in name of increasing life expectancy, lifespan, in creating stronger bodies, genetics which will go beyond natural selection, computing which will augment our human brain power, and of course you will see colonization of Moon and Mars maybe in the next 15 to 20 years. But that is transhumanism 1.0. But as we start connecting with these deeper aspects of our inner body, inner mind, our intelligence, and outer opportunities, outer intelligences, we can move into transhumanism 2.0, where we will see different forms of intelligence coming together. And that is something which will open up huge territories. Because today, as we understand intelligence, as we understand human intelligence, intelligence in the earth, but what are the different forms of other intelligence which might be in our galaxy, in the universe, which, by the way, Gita as well as Upanishads talks about. So in many ways, we are coming closer to some of our ancient wisdom. So that is my first point. Now I'll move into the second point. Just to give you a little bit of understanding, I have a series of slides to explain that because these are difficult concepts. Unfortunately, technically, we could not share my presentation, but I'll give you a little picture of the series of S curves which are establishing. So I have a chart, just think about it. The x-axis is investment in knowledge, and the y-axis is velocity of human progress. Just imagine that. Investment in knowledge, and the y-axis, the vertical axis, is about velocity of human progress. Now we know in 1700s how the steam engine, just one invention of James Watt, steam engine changed the course of history. But it was a very straightforward power which created a huge industrial revolution beginning in Western Europe but spread all over the world. Then comes from young man Thomas Edison, who did not finish high school, electricity. And that again created the next wave of evolution, which also changed the nature of the world. And then comes what I would call the miniaturization, where we saw the advent of semiconductors, consumer electronics, particularly building in Japan, transistors, electronics be getting miniaturized. And now we are entering a space where 4 S curves are happening at the same time, which has never happened before. And each of the curves are significantly more powerful than the previous powers, which we have seen in name of steam engine, in name of electricity, or in name of semiconductors. And what are those S curves? As we discussed earlier, gene editing and CRISPR technologies, nanomaterials and metamaterials, artificial intelligence and robotics, and of course, exploration of space. So that is obviously creating a very new kind of dynamics, and the nature of change we'll see with all these 4 powerful forces creating a nature of discontinuity which we have never seen before. And that's why this subject is extremely important, and particularly for Academy of Leadership, because the basic question is what kind of leadership capacity we must develop so that indeed we could engage with these new forces, the new technologies in an effective fashion, as opposed to getting victimized, not being sensitive of how powerful these forces are. For example, when I talk about gene editing, the CRISPR revolution could literally, if managed right, eliminate diseases. It could increase significantly the physical and mental traits of individuals. Now, of course, with each one of them come ethical concerns. Unintended outcomes must be carefully considered. Ethical consideration remains extremely paramount. So each of these technologies, there will be a series of ethical challenges. Similarly, when you look at the last 30 years of the development of AI and robotics all coming together, the concept of humanoid working in hospitals, working in restaurants, working in hotels, working in your home to serve you is becoming extremely real. And that is another project which, again, Elon Musk has taken under the umbrella of Tesla. So as you could see, these are real developments taking place. When I look at nanotechnology, which is much closer to my area, being a chemical engineer, I've always enjoyed material science. Now, our ability to manipulate DNA molecules, nanoscale transistor manufacturing, nanomedicine, nanorobotics, building on the power of optical, magnetic, and chemical and sensory properties of nano and metamaterials would lead to a series of opportunities, particularly how we manage our human body, how we manage our organs, how do you manage our cells within the system. And as a result, you will see a rise of a new type of human being. So now if I step back, I'm actually feels very sorry because one of the exhibits I prepared, I'm very proud of. And what does it mean? And I see we are looking at literally a 6-vector change because of this technology. Our intellectual or intelligence vector will cross some of the limits that we have today. Then there's a biological vector, a physical ability would change in a fundamental way because of this technology. Our ability to connect with our spiritual self, inner self, would significantly enhance. And with that, you would see changes in our psychological and emotional capacity. So as a result, the human being, if it could engage with these technological changes in the right fashion, would become significantly more powerful in terms of intelligence, in terms of strength, and the lifespan they could lead. Now that reminds me again in Mahabharata, many of you may know there's an individual called Bhishma who was about 180 to 200 years old while the battle of Kurukshetra was taking place. So the imagination of the past to create the future is extremely important. And what is more interesting for me, particularly as the gains, again, gains, I mean gene editing, artificial intelligence, nano, and space, they come together. We have a unique opportunity to transform our current business systems in the world. Healthcare and human care system could fundamentally change. We can really give birth to the concept of circular economics. The agricultural infrastructure could change. And most importantly, the water resource management and geosphere management would change. So the climate problem that we are facing today, because of these technologies, if they're guided properly, we could really create a new kind of eco-friendly, ethical, equitable system, and where the current business processes would be significantly more healthy, significantly more sustainable, and significantly more friendly, particularly for the people at the base of the pyramid. Because as you know, out of 7.5 billion people, almost 3 to 3.5, maybe 4 billion people are closer to the base of the pyramid, and perhaps 750 million who are the people at the top of the pyramid. So that leads to a very third point of mine, navigating the dark side, the ethical, the existential, and social challenges of these technologies. As much as they offer tremendous opportunities, but the negatives are equally strong, if not stronger. Now, if you think in terms of, I'll just touch on each one of them, the gene editing and CRISPR, which is basically rewriting the biological human. You're rewriting or editing the biological human. The positives we have talked about, we can eliminate hereditary diseases, we can improve our physical and cognitive traits, our capability of managing the natural evolution will significantly increase. That's all good, but these technologies being very expensive, there could be bio inequality, leading to what I will call genetic underclass. People who could afford, they would be significantly more powerful, but many will remain behind. Ethical, it could be an ethical mindset. Who decide which traits are desirable? And what about the unborn people? Because there's a concept that we could design our babies, but who decides on behalf of the unborn? Then there could be unpredictable mutations. That's the most dangerous one. Off-target effects or unintended consequences, because we are dealing with very fundamental forces of nature and many things we may not know. So clearly, if you think in terms of gene editing, there's several ethical issues. Similarly, if you think in terms of artificial intelligence, particularly when I talk about artificial general intelligence, where we are talking about mind beyond biology, as we know today. Now, obviously, the positives are very clear, but we may lose autonomy. Humans cognitively become dependent and become subservient to AGI systems. There could be misalignment between what AGI wants to do and what is good for human beings. And there could be a cultural entropy. Human stories, myths, and emotions might become obsolete or irrelevant. And then, of course, when you're talking about space travel, yes, it's interesting. We could colonize the moon. We could have new kind of experiences in different parts of the universe. But at the same time, we will get detached with the environment. Our body and mind could start working very differently. And as a result, we could create a situation where we are ourselves becoming misfit in the planet where we were born, where we ultimately belong. So there are some very difficult issues and challenges that we have to deal with. And what I worry the most, I would have loved to show you the chart. Think of the 6 vectors that I talked about, but how each one of them who could afford these technologies will connect with the vectors could be very different. As a result, you might see some human beings with tremendous amount of intellectual power because they have worked on the artificial intelligence, the brain computer interface exclusively to increase the intelligence. Some others might have worked with gene editing to increase their beauty and strength. So there could be different types of individuals, and the diversity that we talk about often could fundamentally increase, and each of the diverse individuals have some supernatural powers. And that could create a tremendous amount of social disorder, chaos in the socioeconomic, geopolitical structure of our civilization. So we have to keep that in mind. So indeed, I want to close the third point with a very fundamental thought that the ethical and philosophical issues and the social issues are extremely strong and they need to be handled. And again, taking the spirit of Tagore in a fearless fashion, but we must engage with them. Now, for example, the question that comes into my mind, if we plant artificial intelligence in the human brain to enhance our thinking, enhance our intelligence, are we still humans? Very fundamental question. If our minds are uploaded to the cloud and our consciousness remains, are we still ourselves? If we can no longer die, does the meaning of life change? If we become ageless, we can manage our lifespan. What is the meaning of life? What is the meaning of being human? So transhumanism, in other words, is raising some fundamental questions of our time. That brings me to the fourth point, which is I call the significance of ancient philosophy, particularly how do we connect with the echoes of Vedic imagination and how do we take some of the lessons learned. Again, I regret that I'm not being able to set an exhibit, but I had an exhibit which looks at 2 dimensions. One is transhumanism. Think of one vector as transhumanism getting developed in a random fashion. Transhumanism is getting developed in a structured fashion, that someone is guiding the process, maybe governments, maybe a body like United Nations, structured development of transhumanism. That is one dimension, the 2 ends I'm talking about. The other dimension is our human conscience remaining passive versus human conscience being inspired and active. So you have 4 quadrants. Let's think of a quadrant where we have made extraordinary effort to connect with our philosophies so our human consciousness is significantly more active and inspired, and the technologies that we are talking about is well structured under the guidance of some international bodies. That's where I call up about a society where you will see transformational positive change. Transformational positive change. And that is where I think we want to be if we want to take advantage of the technologies. On the other side, if our human conscience remain as we are today, we are kind of subservient to the external forces. Though fortunately, Vedic philosophy has always given importance to development of human consciousness, but for some reason we have forgotten it. We have become victims of modern day capitalism. If that system or that way of thinking continues, then you will see stratified and disorderly gains. That people will specifically use technologies to improve their capabilities, who can afford them. As a result, you will see cognitive caste system. Some people are extremely smart, These are their edited elites. I call them edited elites, elites who have been edited by genomics, by artificial intelligence. There will be digital feudalism, and there could be artificial general intelligence-led governance. In other words, human would lose touch with governing themselves. AGI would govern us. So there could be a system which would be fundamentally, I would say, it could gradually take us towards a black hole. So positives are significant. The negatives are significant. The vector that we have to manage here is essentially the vector of human consciousness. And that's where the Vedic philosophy becomes extremely important. And where we, as you know, when we look into Vedic philosophy, we talk about the self, not the body, or even the body, but the Atma, the pure consciousness, which is eternal and unchanging. Technologies may change the vehicle, but they cannot touch the essence. We have to keep in mind those. And in the spirit, we have 4 points from Vedic philosophy, which will become extremely important. And that's where I feel a country like India has a very, very important role to play if we can connect with the subject of transhumanism. In fact, I would like to encourage IIT Kharagpur, because of this session, that we make a presentation to the Prime Minister of the country so that we could start thinking about how to harness the power of all the 4 technologies that we are talking about. But at the center is the spirit of Vedic philosophy. Because when you talk about karma and responsibility, we are talking about every act, even in the digital realm, has consequences. When we talk about dharma and right action, what are we talking about? Dharma is a responsible, righteous responsibility. So the pursuit of power must be governed by higher moral order, higher cosmic order. And yoga and inner science, the true enhancement comes from not just from chips and genes, but we should understand from the self-mastery of the soul. So then when we can master the soul, then we can harness the power of genes and chips in a significantly more responsible, ethical, and sustainable fashion. So if I move forward now, the final point I would like to make before I hand it over to Steve is, what does this mean when we think of leadership? And that's why we are having this conference at the Academy of Leadership. As Professor Chakraborty rightly pointed out, we are very proud because this is the first of the kind in the world where we are trying to bridge the Eastern and Western philosophies to build a concept of leadership which is very different from the concept that we have seen over the last 200 years because of the industrial revolutions, where we have become zero-sum thinkers, that someone has to lose for me to win. And we end up creating segmentation when we should be creating synergies. So the last point I want to make is that given this whole host of technologies that we are talking about, the dynamics, managing the dynamics of frontiers would be very difficult because each of the technologies are very different. Genomics versus Gen AI versus AR, which is augmented reality versus virtual reality, biomechanics, bioinformatics, robotics, humanoids, nanomaterials, space technologies, they're all coming together. So every leader that we think of has to have some idea of how this technology is going to affect their businesses. And keeping in mind that these technologies cannot be touched. We have to imagine either they are 10 to the power minus 9, the micro forces of nature, nuclear forces, genetic forces, nanomaterials, none of them could be seen. On the other side, when we are talking about large-scale systems like AGI, artificial general intelligence, we are talking about 5G, 6G, 10G, the space exploration, we are talking about large-scale system, which I call Terra, 10 to the power plus 9. So either we are the 10 to the power minus 9 space, or we are 10 to the power plus 9 space. So our ability, a leader's ability to imagine and take a point calls either in 10 to the power minus 9 space or 10 to the power plus 9 space is extremely important. Very different from the kind of leaders where We could touch the piston of the engine, we could touch the valves of the radio, which were within our human comprehension. So the first requirement would be that ability to imagine. The second point would be our ability to deal with discontinuities, because these discontinuities will happen very rapidly because of these technologies. It is not that it will last for 30 years. In every 30 months, new S-curves will be born, which mean our ability to change the game, our ability to acknowledge the formula that made me successful in last 30 months will not work for the next 30 months. I have to find a new formula. And that requirement would significantly increase. That's the imperative one. And third would be, how do we bring all these powers into play in current businesses? Because some of them could be very much in early stage of development. We have the opportunity to shape the future. Some of them could be, places like education, universal, like IIT, the places of entertainment, healthcare system, hospital, which are already existing. How do we adapt to the future in view of the new technologies which are emerging? So first is shaping the future, second, adapting to the future. And in third cases, which are many industries in America is struggling right now, given that what we have done has worked, but how do we reconfigure them where the number of people required in that industry, which is perhaps it was 10,000, today we would perhaps run with 10. A good example, hospitality, because the human eyes are doing much of the work. How do we bring into play such technologies to adjust for the future? So as a result, when I think of a leader in the future, they should have 7 characteristics. Again, I hope I could have showed you the exhibit, but I'll quickly touch on them. First, a great leader should be both a philosopher and a technologist. In other words, Albert Einstein and Tagore in one. Leaders who understand both quantum physics and metaphysics also understand ethical codes and consciousness. A great leader must be scenario planners, not prophets. Don't pick one future, but build the capacity to thrive across multiple possibilities. So you have to imagine the possibilities and prepare. Depending upon which scenario would emerge, we are ready. Third, they must be ethical architects, particularly shaping norms and laws that ensure that we respect the cosmic power as we use technologies to uplift our society. They should be systematic synthesizers, as I mentioned, the biotech, gene and tech, AI, climate sciences, all of them are merging. So a good leader should be able to synthesize multiple technologies, however sophisticated they may be. They should be spiritually elevated. A great leader should be rooted in stillness, connected with inner conscious, yet agile in action, combining ancient truths with future possibilities. The sixth point, they should be stewards, not rulers. Recognize that leadership is a service, a humble service. That's why in the Academy of Leadership, we look at it as a temple where we submerge our egos to help to lift others to a collective unfolding of the personality of the civilization, not domination of any particular community. And finally, they should be guardians of dignity. Ensure that technology expands human agency, not replaces it, or erases it, or create a caste system or divide which is significantly more than what it is today, because people who could afford these technologies would be significantly more intelligent, significantly more powerful. As a result, I think we have to move the leadership dial, if you will, where most of us have grown up understanding deductive logic, zero-sum thinking. We are typically numbers driven. We adapt to the culture. We manage conflicts. We accept conflicts and we manage conflicts. That is definition of a leader in the past. But that dial, that needle has to move towards a new paradigm where we have moved from deductive logic to inductive logic to imaginative logic. We have to think in terms of a plus-sum game, not zero-sum game, where we could synergize. We should be visualization-driven, human conscious-driven, and most importantly, we should be able to architect the identity of future human, and in the process, enable creative synergies. So what does it mean for corporate and academic leaders? We have to move beyond shareholder capitalism. That's why we think the capitalism needs a fundamental rethinking, because if it is all about money, then obviously we ended up serving the top of the pyramid, because that's where the money resides. So we have to think of long-range planetary strategy in the context of the cosmic order. So I have a term, some of you are familiar with it. We have to think in terms of cellularism, where each cell is a biological cell. We have to respect the intelligence in the cell, and in the process, give the freedom to the cell to engage with each other without controls. It's not socialism, it is neither capitalism, it is basically respect for cellular intelligence. It is perhaps a topic for a different day. For the academic leaders, I think there's a fundamental rethinking requirement. Universities has to be reinvented. And IIT Kharagpur could perhaps take the lead, not only for the country, for the world. And that is the kind of ambition with which we have to work. A university should be viewed as civilizational laboratories, not just credential factories. Mark the word, not just credential factories. That we give stamps, we give certificates, people go and find jobs. These are civilization labs where we can think in terms of all these technologies and connect with human consciousness. We must be cross-disciplinary, and most important, professors who are in the middle of the teaching have to cultivate in themselves the spirit of being a student so they can inspire the students, because the world is changing rapidly. Unless we learn, we have very little to deliver. And in the process, I think the focus has to move from typical education, which has been left brain oriented, where we learned about how to think sequentially, logically, analytically, which is important, left brain. But we have not touched the right brain. Right brain is all about visualization, humanistic, connecting with the inner conscience, creative, connecting with the big picture, and yet remain humble. That is the development of the right brain. And fortunately, if you study the texts that were taught in Taxila in 500 BC, in Nalanda in 500 AD, much of the educational process was the development of the right brain, development of the human conscience, being imaginative. In fact, Tagore started that process in Shantiniketan about 100 years ago. So indeed, we are moving to a world where the education minister, the prime minister, will sit down with the directors to create what I will call the ecosystem where we could see a new kind of education system is developing. So I will end with one point. We are all students of thermodynamics. We understand entropy. What is entropy? It describes the universe as a natural inclination towards increasing disorder. So entropy is about disorder, randomness, and unavailable energy. But there's a new term which was introduced in 1990s by a person by the name of Max Moore. Some of you have heard. It's called extropy, E-X-T-R-O-P-Y, extropy. And I love it. In fact, I didn't know, I came to know about it 3 days ago, because I was thinking we have to move from a new concept of tropy beyond entropy. And then I came across the term extropy. I was called human tropy, but this is a better term, which basically is seen as a force that counters the universe's tendency towards disorder. It represents the processes that lead to increased functional order, information, systems intelligence, vitality, for a continuous capacity that God has given us for self-improvement and the improvement of the planet, for that matter, improvement of the universe. So I think, I don't know whether we want to call extropy, but transhumanism is all about development in two dimensions, both physical and human. Because ultimately it is about our evolution of our senses, functions, and reasoning. And in that spirit, I'll end with a quote from Immanuel Kant, who was a German philosopher. Very, very touching quote, but I think particularly relevant to deal with this powerful force of transhumanism. All our knowledge begins with the senses, proceeds then to the understanding, and ends with reasoning. And there's nothing higher than reason. So in that spirit, we have to use our logic and reason to connect our human conscience to guide the development of transhumanism. And transhumanism and Vedic philosophy comes together, and that ability we would need to develop with a holistic perspective, so we can connect with all these technologies that we talked about: nanotechnology, material science, biochips, drugs, gene editing, biomechanics. I can go on: neuroscience, brain-computer interface, neural engineering, augmented reality to artificial general intelligence. They are all happening. They're coming together, but we have to literally raise ourselves, connecting with human consciousness to make the right directional choices, which are not obvious to the ordinary, but yet follow a simple logic, a simple cosmic order, guided by our inner conscience. So with this spirit, I would like to pass on the baton to my friend Steve, who will take one of these dimensions, which is the brain-computer interface. He's right there, expert in neuroscience, expert in healthcare, an entrepreneur, an academic. We are talking about someone who is a Renaissance man. Here is a Renaissance man who is running a company which is a product. He was about to give me a gift the other day to put on something around my head which will make me more intelligent. So I'm looking for that product so that I could further enhance my intelligence. And finally, I want to thank you. I'm so sorry that though we are talking about technology, but technology didn't allow me to share my presentation today, which I've worked with a lot of energy, to be honest with you, because these are very difficult concepts. Without the visuals, it is very difficult to communicate, which I try to communicate. With that, with folded hands, I notice I'm also not available in the camera. I don't know why everything has conspired against me, but this story must continue. The narrative is there. So with that, I hand it over to Steve. Steve, it's all yours.
Parthoda, you can switch off your camera and switch on once again. Just try.
Oh my God, you should have told me earlier. Let me see.
Just try.
Yeah. Anyway, I just
No,
tried.
it's not working. Okay, fine.
I'm so sorry,
Yeah.
But when Commander, you are there, you cover all of us with Vivekananda behind.
So let's get Steve.
Steve, all yours.
All mine. I do have some slides I'd like to share. We'll see if they work. Thank you. I always learn a lot from you, Partha, and it always makes me very humble in terms of understanding what the true objectives of life are. We have to put our humanist hats on when we live in this transhuman world. It's not just about technology. Let me see if I can share a couple slides here. Maybe. I'm looking around here. Give me one moment here.
Anupam, I hope he has got the authority to share.
Yeah.
Yes.
Do I have permission to share? Here we go. Got it. All right. Can you see this?
Not, yeah. Now something is coming. Yes, we can see now. Yeah.
Good. I'll make this brief, but I'm showing an example of transhumanism. I didn't know what transhumanism is until I started hearing from a lot of people. And then I discovered it described my life. It's really about making the human condition, the human potential, achieve everything someone wants, although that's getting a little bit more dicey. Let me mention briefly.
Can you get into slide presentation mode, Steve? Slide will become bigger. Slide presentation mode.
Okay. Let me see if I can figure out how to do that. It is, oh, you know what? I'm probably sharing the wrong version of it. Hold on just a second.
Slideshow.
All right. Yeah, I had slideshow, but it didn't pull it up. Let me try again. I put it.
You can share the entire screen and then make it bigger.
All right, let me do that. Share here. Screen. Yeah, I'm not sure that I can actually get it bigger. I will try. Hold on just a second. Share hide. No. Is it bigger now?
No, it's same. It's not in presentation mode yet.
All right, we're going to have to operate here briefly.
Okay, fine. Take it. Okay, go ahead.
So I didn't know I was a leader, like many of you, because we're all technophiles. I never raised my hand in class, and I never said anything out of turn growing up, but I love technology. And yesterday I spoke to someone I haven't spoken to in 60 years. He said, we had no idea you were basically, quote, going to be as accomplished as you are back when you were a little kid. And the rationale for that is that everyone on this call is a potential leader, and in fact is a leader. And I want to empower everyone to take action. You are already well educated. You're already highly respected by your community, by your family. You don't need to be the leader of a country to be a leader. You can be a leader of your neighborhood. You can be a leader in a small project. And the thing that I really want you to relish is the fact that with the coming changes, you have a more important voice than most of your peers in your family in understanding that it's not going to hurt us. It's not going to be a problem. There are caveats, of course, but I want to encourage everyone to be a leader. And for me, the number one part about being a leader is seeing a problem. It's not thinking of a technology, it's seeing a problem that needs to be fixed. And that's driven my entire career. Let's talk about building better brains. This is a nice analogy here because what it shows is we understand how to improve our physical bodies, and our brains need the same kind of workout. We just haven't had the same kinds of abilities and technologies as we have available to our physical world. However, as Bon Jovi, the great rock and roller, said, I like progress, but I hate change. We all love our cell phones, but I can't tell you what it was like the first days that it first came out, trying to get someone to understand how to actually dial it. I'm a little older than many of you, but I live in a world where people don't want GPT in my classrooms or in my elder crowd. But I spend many, many hours teaching my 5 and 10-year-old grandkids how to use it because this is part of their life and this is an important part of their life.
Slides are not moving.
Whoops, they're not moving?
Yeah, we are still on the first slide, at least on my screen. Is it, Commander?
Yeah, it's still on the first, number 2 screen,
Right.
number 2, if you ask me.
Stop sharing. Whoops. Did that work? All right, hold on.
Now you are slide. I think we have to think of different technology in the future.
Okay.
Team never works.
Okay. So I will jump off of the slides then. Okay. So hold on, I got to get back to the video. Oh, I can see you now. Let me try one more time. Let me see if I share that window. Let's try sharing this. Can you see it now?
Yeah,
All right. Does it show?
I like progress. Yeah.
It's now slide number 4 being shown.
Okay. All
And
right.
it is not in
So
presentation mode yet.
it's not in presentation mode yet?
No.
All right.
So you will have to physically select from the left side band one by
Okay,
one.
I'll do that.
Yeah.
All right. So
Yeah.
I'll
Yeah.
jump ahead a little bit. Here I am doing a little meditation. All right. This is the coming change in our world, the ability to monitor our brain waves and actually use technologies that can modify them, like biofeedback. Unfortunately, this technology costs probably $10,000, and I was an abysmal failure at traditional meditation. But when I used a system that was linked to a tone so that my brain waves could inform me through my auditory system where I was in the relaxation state, it was a matter of a short period of a few weeks before I could actually learn to meditate. And so it's a training tool that put me on a quest to go do a lot of things. What's the quest I'm on right now? I'm actually on a quest not to just measure something, which is what so much of neurotechnology and all of our wearables today are. We're not just trying to measure, we're actually trying to improve. What you see here is the attention span of all humanity that lives in the modern era has declined 75%. I'm talking about adults. And it's fundamentally the technologies we're living with. We now have a brain for the 21st century, but we still need a 20th century brain to drive a car, to do surgery, and to learn. Here's a picture of the technology that I've actually developed, which shows, I didn't actually develop it, I'm actually managing the company. It's called Think, T-H-Y-N-K. What you see is a small headset monitoring the brain waves of this child or an adult or anyone. You need no medical condition to do this. And we train 13 cognitive skills related to attention and focus. And the thing we found is in this enjoyable world, using your brain to think, to control a video game on an iPad, i.e. your brain waves determine whether you win or lose the game. We can actually improve behavior and academic performance in the outside world. You don't become just good at the game, you actually improve your grades, you improve your behavior, you no longer punch your sister, you're more productive at work. We've gotten to the point with children in school, we're playing the game 1 hour a week with no academic training involved from us. 80% of the kids advance 1 year in standardized math and reading. They've lost the attention span that's needed to perform on a test or to do surgery or to be a great athlete. Where are we headed now? This is just the beginning. This is the first technology that's available in a convenient form, built by some of the most brilliant EEG and brain scientists in the world. But where are we headed? We're going to be heading into the human enhancement world. We immediately think of these technologies bringing someone with a disability to the level playing field, whether it's wearing eyeglasses or getting your teeth straightened. We actually like people to, quote, be normal. But the idea of enhancement, which Partha talked about in terms of aging, is very, very near at hand. And in fact, it is a very well-worn path, moving from disease, where people will spend more money, the ethical boundaries are very clear, and into performance, i.e. athletic performance or other being a better Top Gun pilot, and immediately almost aging in beauty. You heard about Larry Page building a company and others. This is now the domain mostly of the rich people, but it's become a very big place. But what I do know is history has told us when we have a technology that is, 1, safe, and 2, affordable, the world adopts it. All the life science technologies we're talking about will move into that domain as they get safer and safer. By the way, Larry Ellison for Oracle stopped funding anti-aging companies because he realized it wasn't working. And why not live longer if you actually have that kind of money in your pocket? So there's one other issue that we have to be concerned with as we move into this new world. of transhumanism, which is really this ethical dilemma. By the way, these technologies that we're generating will be used pervasively when, as I said, they're safe. And the idea of being safe differs for a 90-year-old compared to a 20-year-old. 90-year-olds, in my experience, are happy to do anything to their bodies if it's not going to kill them this afternoon. But more broadly, what about our brain? Our brain is the new frontier. Our brain is the place that has really been sacrosanct in terms of what lives in our minds, should stay in our minds, and how we actually touch it and modify it. At the same time, we have lots of mental illness. We have people who are suffering from depression, people who are curled up in a bed, unable to leave their house. We have people who have schizophrenia. We have many other disabilities, or it could be just simple anxiety or a learning disability. So trying to bring people back to a better place has both benefits and perils. Let me show you one, actually this probably won't work in this mode. There has actually been a slide in the presentation mode. What this shows, this is 9-year-old technology from UC Berkeley, from the Gallant Lab, where they actually showed, after training an AI system on YouTube videos and fMRI data, they could put a human being into the fMRI and actually recapitulate the video they were watching. fMRI is very slow, has very poor spatial resolution, and there's now new technologies that will allow us to see signals throughout the brain. In particular, one that my close friend, my good friend, Mary Lou Jepson has a company called Open Water. She came out of the MIT Media Lab with 1 laptop per child, and she's now open sourced a simple laser-based system for imaging and monitoring the brain. And she's open sourced it so anybody on the planet can develop a use case for anything that's going on. I would encourage you to look up opensource.io. So the world is changing. And if we think about that, what are the concerns we have? Well, there's certainly benefits. We can enhance learning, improve behavior. Behavior change, it remains the #1 thing that afflicts human welfare, whether it's growing too fat or smoking or anything else. If we can actually impact these, it's going to be great. Erasing bad memories for those with PTSD, restoring lost functions. But we have lots of concerns. And I hear about these from when I give talks, reading people's thoughts, implanting new thoughts, creating new abilities. I'm actually quite intrigued by the opportunity to create more than 5 senses, since there are so many other ways that other species see the world, and we could actually find ways to integrate those into our abilities. And one last comment here is there are scientists out front leading this. There's a group called the Neuro Rights Foundation. It was formed out of Columbia, where Oppenheimer had been and failed to form a consensus or an opinion early on about the nuclear potential. And here what we're finding is in Chile, the country, 4 years ago passed the first Brain Bill of Rights. It's about privacy, ownership of your own data, and all of the obvious things. We don't want people to infusing things in our brain. The problem is it's so broad. They got 100% agreement from the legislature. And the same things happened actually in Colorado in our country, in the United States, because it's obvious to put limits on things that don't exist yet. But I also know that we're going to have a lot of things that are relatively benign, the equivalent of a wearable watch. So it's only going to be fought in lawsuits how this field will actually come about. And my company, and me in particular, as a global citizen, I care a lot about transformational change and doing it well. And with that, I'll just end with a quick image of me and my close friend Juan Enriquez, who wrote a book about human body evolving and changing every day as we speak. And I showed you one example today, which was the example that of using that human attention span has declined That is not by accident. That was not built in. That is our biology from being a caveman that's adapted to the modern world. And that is going to continue to happen. So don't be surprised by it. And with that, I'll conclude. I'll simply say this has been a delight. I've learned a lot. I believe in transhumanism, and I believe that everyone on this call is a leader in their own way. So please step up and do it. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Do we straight away go ahead with the question answer session, or someone, Chakravarti, Professor, you want to say something? Okay. Anupam, I just saw a message on my screen that only 3 minutes more.
Yeah, we can continue. So there
we
is
can
no
continue.
issues.
Okay, fine. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay. So I will start with the question answer session. Now, the first question which that comes to my mind, isn't that we are interfering with the nature a bit too much? As far as helping a disabled person, that he is able to do his activities in a normal manner, it's perfectly okay. But a proper human being like me or you, suppose you give me one injection and my strength just doubles. And don't you think it will create a mess up in the society? People will start bashing up their neighbors itself.
So I'll answer first. I wrote an article actually 13 years ago in Nature magazine, the journal, saying the future of the Olympics may try to handicap people based on their genetic differences. Is it fair that someone has a mutation in their EPO receptor and wins a gold medal because they have more red blood cells than all the other competitors? So we're already fundamentally different at birth. And change takes time. People don't like change. I mean, 50 years ago, there was only one way to have a baby. Now we have more than a dozen, and we take it for granted. And so change is inevitable. It's responsible change is really what Parth and I are talking about. There will always be enclaves, especially when things become affordable in communities, in small islands, or where people practice what they want. And that will always be a problem. And it's true today, whether it's criminal activity, making drugs or anything else. But in the general society, we need policymakers who can appreciate the subtleties and appreciate the potential and really funnel things in the right direction. It will become more challenging. There's no doubt about it. And I would have, so anyway, I don't know, Partha, if you have a comment.
Yeah. I think you used a very important word, responsible change. That's very good. Now, there's somebody who's raising question for a very long time. His screen says Kumu Global Peace Secretariat. Please go ahead.
Peace Secretariat.
Kumu Global Peace Secretariat. Who is that? Okay, fine. Vijay Narangji, you want to ask some question? Please go ahead. Vijay, we can't hear you. Unmute.
Let's switch to Kumu. Why don't we switch to Kumu? Kumu, can you
Kumu
speak?
Global.
You to
Vijay,
unmute yourself.
anyone who can unmute and ask the question? No, we can't hear you. Any one of them? Okay.
Commander, let
Unable
me.
to unmute. Anupam, I hope they have the authority to unmute.
Maybe they're not being able to
Yes,
unmute.
sir. Just 1 minute.
Because
Let me reflect, with your permission, to the first question that you raised. Building on what Steve had to say. Firstly, I fully agree with Steve. But the other thing you have to keep in mind, if you think purely from the divine point of view, that God has given us the mind to continuously explore the unknown. So exploration of the unknown, the way it takes place now, we have reached a point they're becoming challenging some of the fundamentals. Absolutely right. But that's where the human conscious has to come to place, that as we connect with the fundamental, whether we are talking about CRISPR technology or whether we are talking about planting a chip in our brain, we have to do it in a fashion that we do not create a stratified society. We create a society which is homogeneous in nature, but yet, we are exploring the new frontiers, because I feel one of the roles God has given us is to explore the universe. Universe is infinite, and in the process, we have to make some tough calls.
Okay. Yeah, I think it was Shikha Priyadarshini at Kumu Global.
Yes, I
Please,
can. Can
please
you
go
hear
ahead.
me? Can you hear me?
Please. Yeah, we can hear you.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. This is Kumu Gupta from Boston in Dr. Ghosh's neighborhood. Um, so couple of points. Humanism, humans, and human rights has to be central to any conversation we have. Okay, it could be in any field, anywhere. It always has to be central. The second point is that in terms of extraterrestrials, the US government has plenty of proof over the years, going back to at least 30 years now, that extraterrestrial life does exist. They have them, they have captured them, and they're studying them. They don't let the public know, but it's there. And the third point is that as far as the Vedic times, of course, spirituality and those principles, we have a lot to learn from them, but technology wise also we have a lot to learn from them. So this was an excellent effort by Dr. Ghosh to try and bring everything together, a mammoth task, but at least he has attempted it. So congratulations.
Thank you. I'm sorry that I could not use my slides, but thank you very much.
Vijay Narang, you can try to unmute.
Vijay, you have to stop your car first, then you speak. Yeah, we have to guide people. One of the roles is
He's in
to
Waymo.
use technologies. Vijay is obviously a good experiment here. Vijay, we can't hear you. Let's move on.
Okay. Sir, what is happening today in the world? Ukraine, Russia at loggerheads with each other. India, Pakistan, what has happened in Pahalgam recently?
And now you should be able to see.
Just very, very unfortunate. Under such circumstances, such huge powers in the hands of the mighty, don't you think they will just disturb the world altogether? Again, though I agree with you on this thing, responsible change, but people are not responsible. They are just blindly following those 1,000 years back just from some book, and they are not ready to listen to what is right and what is dharma, what is the righteousness thing. They are not ready to listen to that.
Right. So I think, let me respond to that, Commander. That's my favorite question. I'm so glad no one other than you have raised this question. After all, you are the commander. And as a commander, we have a responsibility. And I feel the way I view the Academy of Leadership is to bring that state of consciousness, a movement, as Mr. Dr. Major General Khurana talks about, where we have to awaken the consciousness. But unless we do that, you are absolutely right. The people who have the power, they will dominate, they will control, they will create wars, and they feel empowered because they have the power. So we have to really make this movement that you are very much part of, and to make this movement through the Academy of Leadership really become a global movement. We need it right now as we speak. You're absolutely right, because we are continuously making wrong choices.
Hello, how are you? Good, how are you? Good.
In
What
name
can I get for you? Cleaning. Interior cleaning. You want to clean inside too? Yeah.
Okay, Vijay Narangji, you can ask now.
Okay. My question really is that during the Vedic period in the Upanishads, the world was so advanced, as various examples were given by even Partho today, that people could live practically ageless, they could do space travel and things like that. And the consciousness level was very high. Purely as a learning lesson, if that was so good, why did the world degenerate to what it has degenerated to today? Could they not prevent this cycle that has taken place, purely from a learning point of view?
I have a strong point of view on that. Firstly, Vijay, you're absolutely right. The sciences and technologies that developed in the foothills of Himalayas 5,000 years ago, from all the way from the Himalayas, just imagine, to the Indian peninsula, unfortunately got remained limited to that space. Number one. Number two, it was a technology of the human conscience first. It was inside out as opposed to outside in. Okay. Now, inside out technologies are very, very difficult to teach, but India made its effort through the Nalanda and Taxila University. But then came the invasions from the West, when the whole structure that got developed was not protected, got destroyed. And if you look at the nature of invasions that had took place, that those were zero-sum game. So India was not ready, or not even expected, because you were living in a world of utopia where, as you rightly said, people enjoyed the inner connectivity with the consciousness and the universe, and in the process, science and technologies developed in service of inner consciousness, as opposed to what happened in the people who invaded us over time. It was just the opposite side. It was outside in technologies. And outside in technologies lead to typically zero-sum thinking, that I have to win, and I have to win, I have to make someone else lose. But that was not the thinking in India. But unfortunately, sometimes the vicious forces are more powerful than more grandiose forces. And in the process, the degeneration happened. But it's never too late. We have gone through a cycle. Now time has come to wake up and reestablish what Steve was talking about. We have to accommodate that in the context of development of the human conscience, in the context of Nalanda University. And that synergy, I think it is our responsibility. And I hope the Academy of Leadership could take leadership in creating that new environment. It's a fundamental
Thank you,
shift.
Partho. Thank you. Now the last question, only one question, more question. We have already overshot time. Anybody? Okay. If there's nobody, then I'm just wishing that I need one injection which the technology should produce, that I can convert the human haters into those who can start loving the human beings. I need that one injection, or maybe even remotely, because they will not allow me to put that injection to them. So remotely, I should be able to convert them from the human haters to human lovers. Okay, with that, may I request now Professor Suman Chakravarti to kindly summarize the overall talk today.
Thanks very much, Commander. Because of interest of time, I will be very brief. We had two exciting talks, and these have really given us food for thoughts, I think, for the next several years, not just for today. Dr. Ghosh, drawing on his 4 decades of experience with frontier strategic issues across industries and nations, and that in a literal sense, explored how emerging technologies such as AI, gene editing, space travel, and developments in material science, among others, could change the character of humanity by transcending current boundaries of thought. But more importantly, in the process, he discussed the leadership requirements for the 21st century and highlighted the role of ethics and the significance of the wisdom found in the philosophies like Vedas and Upanishads. The insights of Dr. Gulans, complementing these, threw lights on how the brain-computer interfaces could create direct links between the brain and the external devices, enhancing cognition, expanding human senses, augmenting and modifying physical abilities to a large extent, and enabling the brain to brain communication. And in the process, he highlighted upon the reduction in the attention span, which I think is very, very important as we move ahead to the next and next generations. By pushing the limits of human biology and opening the paths towards consciousness preservation and mind-machine merging, stimulate the ideals of transhumanism, complementing the philosophical. I would like to thank both of the speakers and of course Commander Jetli, whom we did not have an opportunity to introduce. Well, to the August gathering of the alumni, Commander needs no introduction. But it is my responsibility, before I hand it over to Professor Prajit Nandi for the vote of thanks, to mention just a few words about Commander Jetli, a distinguished alumnus of IIT Kharagpur. He is a decorated naval officer whose illustrious career has been marked by numerous honors, including prestigious military commendations and leadership awards. A thought leader in strategy and leadership, he has authored acclaimed books such as We Can, and the more recent, The 100 Great IITians, dedicated to the service of the nation. These books are widely revered. His contributions to defense innovation, leadership training, and strategic thought continue to earn him recognition and respect both nationally and internationally. Thank you very much, Commander, for being with us in this particular event, as you have been with us for several such events in the past.
Thank you.
We have, I think, crossed the boundaries of time, just like we have crossed the boundaries of thought and imagination. And now I think it's time for Professor Prajit Nandi to propose the vote of thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Professor Chakraborty. Notwithstanding the technical glitches that we faced, but I think the talks were absolutely fabulous, very gripping, and I wish that we could collect some of the questions and actually have a follow-up discussion, maybe roll out these questions to Dr. Ghosh and Dr. Gulans, and maybe they can take some more time to prepare for the next discussion. But what I just one point I would like to mention is what I found very interesting is I think Dr. Ghosh started looking at thousands of years back our in not only Indian history but also the global history, and then connected to what we are undergoing in the present, and then kind of extrapolating what we could do as a human civilization. The only thought that comes to my mind, I didn't actually ask a question in the session because we're running short of time, but what one of the pertinent question that comes to my mind that will we be even able to control some of this evolution that is going to happen? And if we do not, and most likely we will not, if we do not, then this the concept of, let's say, a very uniform society, right? If the evolution happens fast or too fast, then in my mind, it may be a personal bias. The task of developing a uniform society becomes even more challenging, because when we are evolving too fast, the differences kind of tend to get magnified, right? So yeah, these are some of the thoughts, maybe some of the debates we could have in a follow-up discussion, but extremely exciting. And I wish we have a huge and I as a part of the academy, I will see if we can actually invite our students as well, because these time slots like 9 o'clock or 8 o'clock in the evening are actually perfect time for our student community who are in the campus to attend these sessions, right? And that will be I think that should be an easy thing, and we will take it up in our academy. But sincere thanks, and we really look forward to such some more sessions like this. And with that, I think, yep, that's all. Have a good day, everyone, and look forward to more such events. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
thank you, thank you, and goodbye.
Thank you. Goodbye. Thank you. Yeah.